Welcome to the 16th episode of Hello Irlandia Show. Tonight we are streaming live special Irish edition called Free Flowing Conversations. My name is Diana Kostyra.
And I'm Katarzyna Czekaj.
And we are going to be your hosts for this evening. We've prepared for you a great deal of new and vital information in a digestible and hopefully also entertaining form. We're very happy that you've joined us this evening. We are going to be talking about the civil disobedience. We will discuss situation in Canada, but also the mass movement called Otwieramy, which is translated into We Are Opening, which refers to thousands of businesses that are opening in Poland despite all the COVID restrictions.
Our guest, Leszek Szostak, aka Joseph Conrad, is visiting us for the second time. Welcome again to our show, Leszek. Leszek is an architect. Yes. Leszek is an architect, world traveler, biker, ocean kayaker, businessman. He is based in Canada since 1988. However, now reporting on social media from Poland. Political activist, libertarian, independent journalist, regular guest in variety of independent media programs, for instance, in Canada, Poland, and now in Ireland. Such like Lynn Tyler Thompson Show in Vancouver, British Columbia, Radio Poznej Porze, Kitchener, Ontario, Polskie Radio Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, Radio Polonia, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and now Hello Irlandia in Irlandia, Dublin. Hi. So the first question. Hello. First question, Leszek, because we have a lot to talk about tonight. Can you tell me first, your impressions after arriving to Poland in early January, I believe, and how does it compare to Canada?
Well, I'll give you a very simple
COVID situation.
I'll be self-incriminating myself right now because in Canada, before this most recent fiasco with additional restrictions of negative PCR tests before or after and the concentration camp between, you were just sentenced to 14 days of mandatory quarantine after your arrival at Vancouver airport, in my case. And you were supposed to be checked on every once in a while, unless you do what I did, which is try not to wear a mask on the plane. And then I was reprimanded multiple times until we arrived. And before I put my mask on, about 20 minutes, half an hour before landing, I was told by the head steward that if I continue doing that, I will be reported to immigration. And I was. And on arrival, I was tossed around by multiple officers. And the first question they asked me, was it true that I didn't believe in COVID? To which I answered, since when COVID has become a new religion. So after that, because obviously I was very opinionated about COVID-19 and the pandemic and everything else, they forced me to fill out a couple of forms and double-checked things, and I denied or refused to put my application on my phone for contact tracing. So then they told me I should take a taxi or Uber, and I said no, I'm still entitled to take public transportation, just to make a point, because this was the regulation back then. And after I arrived home, the next day I was already contacted by phone by an immigration or like equivalent of health ministry if I'm staying home, and because I wasn't checked on my phone, so they couldn't verify where I was. Anyway, so after a few minutes of questionnaire, I was very irritant And I told them that I don't have any particular appreciation of the process, and why am I locked up if I don't have any symptoms? But anyway, the guy hung up on me because I was not cooperating. And next day I had received another call and I didn't answer because I was mad. So I had police showing up at my door and we had a bit of a chat. But then I realized they are young and kind of open-minded. So after I answered a few questions, they asked me if I need anything. And I said, I need booze and I'm low on Coke. And they were laughing. So they, don't worry, sir, we won't be bothering you again. But then again, the next day they called me again. And the funny part is I arrived back with my wife, but they never called by my wife. So even the last day, which is 14 days in Canada, by the way, I was called again. I said, you must be kidding me. I'm just about to be done with this and you're still checking on me. What is the... So anyway, and then after that, because I'm very vocal in this resistance movement in Vancouver, and then we had the case of guy being banned from the Air Canada flights for life because he was anti-masks. Then they asked him to write a letter if he wants to be reinstated, kind of like re-education camp, kind of to assess his position towards the mask wearing and all the thing. And he has to convince him that he'll flight worthy for the security of the airline. But with me, it ended after 14 days. And then in Poland, when I arrived on January 4th, I filled out the forms on the plane and I came home and I was partying the next day. I was partying every day. I was going out and nobody called me, nobody emailed me. I was anxiously awaiting that contact. I was dying to hear from them, yet they totally forgotten about me. And I feel kind of like sad because I felt like maybe I deserve more attention. But it's 10 days versus 14. Now in Canada, as we're going to be talking about it in a few minutes, I hope, and now they created a little bit more steep slope to coming home, and you might be 5 kilometers away from the airport, might take you from 3 days to 17 days to make it back. So this is bloody crazy, if not criminal, and I hope to enlighten your viewership how criminal it is and why is it happening that way and what we have to do to make it go away.
Okay, that's a good start, I'd say. Very very fascinating. It's gonna be probably even more interesting, as we go along.
If you allow me, Kasia, I would like to. I know this is kind of off topic a little bit, but I am always trying to inspire people and inject some energy because I think that every day is precious and time for bullshit is over. Excuse my French.
Yes.
So what I'm usually doing, and when I started my rallying in Vancouver, April, it was a new thing for me. I was not really much of an activist other than solidarity years in Poland when I was a first year student, and I always stood on the right side of the history, and I'm proud of this. So I have nothing to be ashamed of. But when I started those rallies in Vancouver, I was kind of drawn naturally to those freedom fighters and patriots. And one of them obviously would be Ronald Reagan and Benjamin Franklin. So I said it many times before, but there's one quote I would like to share with everybody because it kind of reflects the reality we are living in when lots of us, but others are asleep because they think that they live free and they obviously take their freedom for granted. So this would be the quote from Ronald Reagan, like, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and headed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling your children and our children's children what it was once like in the United States where men were free. Now, after the election corruption and fraud in the United States with Trump, at least temporarily, pushed away from the presidency that he so honestly earned and deserved. Now we can see that Americans are facing this very issue, and who else but Ronald Reagan to remind people what is freedom, and you cannot let other people take care of it, and you have to fight for it every time. So now 25 years, one generation away, America might wake up in a total enslavement. Another one I can offer you is Benjamin Franklin, who said, those who can give up essential liberty to obtain a temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And that's exactly what's happening right now. If you look at all the sheeple on the street with diapers on their faces, completely subdued and numb, and they think that, like, there's nothing wrong with just being polite and obedient, and, I behave like A, B, or C, be a good citizen, then I help others, and most of all, I will keep some of my freedom and some of the privileges. And what they're doing in the process is by trading that very little freedom for the safety is obviously they want to have a job, or you want to move around, maybe go to the park, maybe get a gym bag or other stuff. Then they don't have any problem deleting the little liberty that they've had, because it's like a frog, slow cooking of a frog. They've been already kind of done and over with before they realize this COVID fiasco, this pandemic, this BS that they impose on us, not out of the blue. This hasn't been in planning for many years, and we can talk about it for days, not hours. However, that's what it is. People don't have a problem compromising just for this little bit of safety. And what is the safety they are getting? This never-ending vicious cycle of promises that goalposts being moved higher and higher and higher. So when you had 2 weeks of flattening the curve, then 3 months of lockdowns, then you had a bit of a thaw, and then you back to second wave, then you go to third wave, then you have a vaccine, and the vaccine doesn't work, and maybe it will work. Then you have a bloody new virus, and then the vaccine might not work for that virus, which again I will explain a bit more later. And then at the end of the day, there is no ending to it. It's just pile after pile after pile, layer on top of the layer of more nonsense. And at the end of the day, what the hell? Like, you're not getting anything. It doesn't matter how compliant you are, how obedient you are, they still get you by your balls. So this is the second one which people have to remember. Don't trade your liberty for little safety, because at the end of the day, you will end up with neither. You won't have any liberty or safety. And the last one, and that's not the last quote because I have one at the very end, and that's about us good people, right? Like during the Nazi Germany, why they became so overwhelmed by Nazism, why they had Adolf Hitler to do to them what he did. Not alone, obviously, because like everything else, there's big banksters behind him and made it happen. Just another topic, another conversation. But with this one, this is a very good quote by Edmund Burke. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. This is why we have to speak. And I don't consider myself perfect, but I think I have my priorities set straight. And it's definitely, good values, patriotism, and common sense that has been the first victim of globalism or liberalism, all this BS that it's happening, prying on people's fear that is the biggest paralyzer. As this, that cortisol, the hormone I've been talking about all the time, that some of us have a choice. You're not being paralyzed by cortisol. The cortisol, the front lobe of your brain. I'm not a doctor, not a pathologist. I can only kind of recall from what I remember. Correct me if I'm wrong. Cortisol is that hormone that is paralyzing you. Is the fear hormone. So, and the other one, the opposite, will be the adrenaline, which is the fight. So you got flight versus fight, and I chose to fight. For me, it's been always instinctive. For most people, they've been paralyzed so much that they didn't get it, and it's like too little, too late for them to even snap out of it because they're so deep into it. It would take a lot of time and energy to unblock that part of the brain that can actually become rational again, because that's the whole thing. Once your brain is paralyzed with fear, you're not rational. You have this confirmation bias, right? And if you have a confirmation bias, like most professionals, doctors, because they say, hey, they pay me to be, follow mainstream, to follow the hospital administrator, the health minister, or the government, because they revoke my license and they do this and that and that. So, and they feel like, why not? Why not go with the flow? I mean, virus exists, so why not? Right? Even though they have no idea what's going on, they will never go and check, because what if they found out it's all bullshit, right? What are they gonna do? When I say, hey, I'm disagreeing with this. So this compliance and this confirmation bias, cognitive dissonance, as they call it, basically, which is like you don't want to accept another truth or another version of event or story or science, because it will demolish your safety bubble, and you want to be in that safety bubble because everything depends on it. It is so much harder to be on our side than on this side. It's always more challenging to be a conservative than to be a liberal, because true conservatism require values. You have to be fiscally conservative, you have to be morally conservative, you have to have a leg to stand on, you have to be logical, and you have to be convincing, and it's very easy to catch you doing something that is odd. While the liberals, the demon rats, as I call them, the commies, the globalists, all the trash that is now dominant, is about 90%. I'm talking about civilized, quote unquote, because nothing is civilized anymore. They are the ones that they have the, they think they're upper echelon. They are the moral standard for everything, because they think they are educated. But what's education if you don't have morals? Anyway, I digress here. So, and we can continue with your questions, because I can talk like this forever, and I rather listen to you and maybe answer. I'm done.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, if we're sharing quotes, I have a good one as well. So the words of John F. Kennedy, who said, "The rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened." So this is what we obviously face every single day.
Yeah, it's a good one, because this is very often used, right? We need to do for the good of everybody, for the common good. But that's common good. It's gonna be gone.
We are stepping on a very slippery slope of democracy, and what democracy is. And I think I watched, your last guest yesterday, Sebastian, and he mentioned something like this, because you're asking about the referendum. When it comes to critical issues, how to govern the society, and which direction we should take. Now, this is a very honorable thing to do, and I think would be perfect if we had intelligent majority, and we can actually make decision based on a physical majority. However, given the state of affairs and how brainwashed people are, and how fiscally dependent on governments, and how corrupted society is, and how movers and shakers, starting from the bankers, the politicians, the professors in universities. I mean, you can go so deep, like the deep state Trump's tried to describe, and you will not find a decent soul, even if you were looking for a month. So how we can entrust a society that's been so manipulated into believing the mainstream media or the government that is signing, the front of the check? I always said, there's not my quote again, but there is something that says, with shekels come the shackles. So once you get the money from someone, then you buying, or he or she is buying your dependence. So the best thing you can do is not take anything from anybody, and particularly don't take anything from the governments, because governments, they don't exist. The governments are simply our reps, and we are supposed to elect them in a democratic fashion. But the way it's going, looking at Trump election or Trudeau election, which I bet they were probably fraudulent as well, and they were, calling Venezuelan election fraudulent. Show me one legitimate election nowadays. I bet that Australia, New Zealand, and probably Ireland, I don't know your country that well, but definitely Canada, it's definitely been elected through some, suspicious activities. And now we know how easy it is to do it. So anyway, democracy is a slippery slope. However, I agree with Diana that like if one person apparently if is being oppressed, we all being oppressed. If we assume that oppression is clearly defined as given and can be substantiated, I'm all for it. So we have this acronym: when one goes, we all go, something like this. I don't remember, but anyway, it is okay. Where we go one, we go all. There it is. And I agree with that. And that's exactly the situation we are in right now, because it looks like we are the minority and we seem to be oppressed by the majority, because majority is being paid and bought for by the governments and bankers and the globalists, the agenda and the World Economic Forum and all the crap that we're facing right now. And very few people have enough stamina and most of all financial resources and enough courage to say, you know what, the life is not worth living anymore. And even if I lose everything, I go for it. Like we need. What's your? Was it Scottish? I think hero Wallace. The thing is, like, it might come to it that we have to put everything on the line and make a choice. And I have some nice, I hope so, closing statement at the end. We'll be talking about Poland a little bit in Europe, and I will try to convince people that the time has come, and this is the final chapter. I mean, there's probably many more of them written. For sure, there's many more of written, but I think that the more we are hesitant and the more obedient and polite and more sheeple-like we are, then fewer chapters there is, because they can close this book very quickly. And if we create a bit of an obstacle, if we stop them or slow them, and some of those plans get derailed because human spirit prevails, doesn't mean we're going to win the war, but we might definitely have some nice battles to win, and that might send the trend. Things can happen. Like I believe in miracles, so it would be stupid for me to be here just to look at my ugly face, talk about it, and not believe that we can prevail, because it's not about screen time. It's about injecting people with a message that this garbage has to end, because at some point we might not have this, we might not have the media, the platform, and we might not have the people listening to us. We all isolated in little cells, and our humanity will be brought to the brink of the extinction. And that's exactly where we're heading, because humanity starts with the brain. You can be wheelchair bound, you can be like Hawkins, you can be almost a shallow man, but if your brain is powerful, then this is all you need. Almost like an artificial intelligence, but if it's in its natural form. So as long as you have brain that is processing, you have a human.
Yeah.
I'm done.
So let's talk then about actually what you do right now. What part do you play in the action we are opening up in Poland? Are you just a witness, a reporter, or are you actively involved?
Well, first of all, people that know me, I'm never a witness. I'm always in the midst of action. I always jump in, full body. I hate to be a bystander. I'm happy to have found that cause. It's been kind of missing from my life. As you mentioned, I traveled. I've been to over 120 countries, and became my passion. And I was very hurt by this nonsense. I felt like my world is collapsing. I'm losing my freedom to move. And then that it's a biggest motivator. So thank you, Canada, to pushing me over the edge. And now you're going to have most pronounced nemesis. I'll be fighting this until I die. And in Poland, because we're talking Poland, right?
Yes. At the minute, we want to talk about Poland and what's happening, and give some ideas to people here. What they can do.
Yes, of course. Well, Poland, obviously, as you tried to start yesterday with Sebastian, we have this spark from Poland, or Iskra in Polish, as we know, and we are obviously hoping this will turn into a flame. Now, Poland has never been expected to be a trend-setting country in terms of influence, particularly in the Commonwealth or British Commonwealth countries, which I was hoping just to cover in a moment, if you remind me after this little country for Poland, because that's important for especially Irish people, British people, Australian, New Zealander, and obviously Canadians. And I've been doing this for the last several weeks because it's like a code, like a key to solve that puzzle. But just sticking with Poland for a second. So yeah, we have this movement that started in Highland, the toughest, at least in the past, ethnic group of Polish people that had a history of being not just patriotic but brave. They even have there's a legend of them saving the king in the Swedish War. Now, obviously, that changed over time, and this also became one of the most affluent part of Poland because of the immigration to United States, and they were obviously supporting their families while there, and a lot of good real estate and tourism was built around this American dollar. So now, they've been enjoying this regional character and kind of affluence and folklore, and they were always doing well all season, all year round. And now when Sebastian kind of called this veto, and again, just to be honest, there's a lot of people that denying him that privilege of being the first, and like there's a bit of competition who what and who's running the show. But I don't really care because I can do pact with the devil before I get rid of him, just to get my goal accomplished. So with him, he started it, and I was actually in Zakopane on January 17, which was the last day of official quarantine introduced by this corrupted government, like any other government, that called for national quarantine without calling it a martial law, because martial law would force them to suspend the constitution, and simultaneously, by doing so, they become liable for damages. So it's a legality that is common throughout the world, Western world, obviously, because the rest of the world doesn't exist, even though we only account for about 10% of area and probably 20% of population. Yet all we talk about is through the Western or Northern Hemisphere prism. So we definitely have a bit of a moment of what to do after this lockdown. People had complied because they've been trained like dogs last year in March and April when they were in complete lockdown, Australian style. So now when they were told, to put on your mask and be obedient dogs, and we're closing everything, they simply just did as they were, like good obedient dogs. And no offense to people, they were totally scared. I appreciated there is that factor. But from the perspective of government to do it, as we know, this wave was a completely fabricated phenomenon, which is, again, another topic, probably later. So 3 weeks, and that 3 weeks is supposed to reduce the exposure to hospitals for emergency services, for respirators, all the BS. And that 3 weeks was supposed to bring the numbers down from so-called red zone or even black zone. And they're using this kind of various criteria, which is all garbage anyway. But I think it had to deal with over 20,000 cases a day on average, measured over the week or 2 weeks. So yeah, this is what they did. And I knew that this would be the beginning of prolonged lockdowns, and had to do with, New Year's Eve parties. So they did it right after Christmas. So people had Christmas because they didn't have Easter, but New Year's Eve, it's the spirit shows up. This is where people are having fun, and they don't want people to have fun because someone will somehow, they will be reminded that there is life after this nonsense. So obviously, first thing they do is they go after fun part. And welcome to Canada, because that's all about it, by the way. And on the 17th of January, obviously, the state of emergency was extended, which is again a script taken from Canada, where state of emergency now is being extended since March of last year or April. That's the longest consecutive state of emergency in the history of British Columbia, probably forever now. So after that, January 17, we already knew that there was enough resistance that people say, okay, enough is enough. And why it started there? Because obviously they knew they're going to lose the winter season, the ski hills and all those things, all the hotels, a lot of people making half of the profits around the time, the spring, the breaks and stuff. So they said, we don't give a crap, we are opening. And I was there on 17. I thought it was happening that day. I missed it because it really started on the 18th. Not many places open, but the message has been sent. And then in multiple cities all across Poland, happened on the way from Zakopane on the 17th. Actually, I stopped in Krakow with a bunch of people I was there with, and we stopped in the first or one of the very restaurants open in Krakow, and we had a good time meeting actually one of the activists. His nickname is Chujny, it's Marek, and we had kind of ad hoc meeting, and we did a live that was viral, and he introduced me as a Leszek from Canada, and we had a very good chat. But so then Wrocław wasn't really doing well at the very beginning, but then it started spreading. We have a bunch of here as a Wall Street boogie and niebo, which is the sky, kind of, or heaven, I guess, in that case. And the owners took a chance, and they open up, and I was there on the very first night, and we got away with murder. This was Thursday. I spent all night there until 5:30 in the morning, and it's all well documented. I'm not removing those compromising videos from my website, from my Facebook, because I know pretty, but I just want to make sure that there is a record of me getting wasted on camera while I'm breaking the law in Poland. So and of it, because that's our new theme. You know, like used to be during the communism or under the Soviet oppression, where the only thing you could do to hurt the government was to stop work and not be productive. So then you deprive the government from any means of production. They couldn't earn the money, so they could have buy US dollars, so you can buy all essentials from the West. But most of all, the Soviet Union was always expecting that Poland will produce all the goods we were obligated to produce, which was about 80% of our gross domestic product. Well, now it's a total opposite. People have to protest to work. People have to protest to make a living, to live productive lives. So now you want to go and you have to fight the cops, the robo-cops, or I call them Zomo or Militia here, which is the very ironic reference to the predecessor of our police under the Polish communist government. So yeah, they were blocking us. The next night, the clubs and they were fighting those two clubs. They closed them while we were actually partying in a club just 20 years away, and they were totally aware we were there. There was probably 600 of us, and we had a blast again till 6 o'clock in the morning. So this is how we do it. More restaurants are opening. I have been part of the multiple situations where we were pressing on cops. They were trying to, well, for the sign of times. In Australia, they brought it cops without name tags on the uniforms. And they're acting, or still are, very violently. That's why we call them robocops. There is even a suspicion that they are not even Australians, that they might be like in the future United Nations soldiers, because they don't have any affiliation with the country or the city or the province. So they can massacre you without blinking. And here, a bunch of young guys taken from countryside without any education most of the time, mostly probably not even completely graduating from whatever police training they have. They dressed up, they look like police, but they're a bunch of jerks, and they don't have it. I even challenged one. I said, like, why are you recording me? Because they're recording, they're obsessed with the cameras, and I was recording them too. There was a lot of screaming and yelling and obscenities, and I was enjoying it. And one of them made a comment, like he called me a name or something, and I said, why don't you just step out, take your uniform off, and talk to me like a man? So if I touch you, I won't touch a cop, for which obviously a paragraph, I will be charged with assault. But if you take your bloody uniform, just face me. I'm not saying I would win, but at least I would give you a beating, and then go back to your whatever crap you're doing there. And there's a lot of that stuff in Poland. It will not happen in Canada. Police is more professional, but they're capable of a lot of harm, and I've seen it in Toronto and Quebec and Manitoba and Alberta. They're very, very ruthless, and that's the Australian style of policing. But Polish situation is slightly different because we have this Slavic twist to everything, and there's a lot of harassment. There's a lot of IDing of people. There's a lot of fining and ticketing. But all of those things can be easily challenged in courts. None of it sticks because it's illegal, it's unconstitutional. You just have to have the guts to tell them to buzz off. In my case, I can't be arrested because I can't challenge them in court if I want to leave. So I'll just default. But other than that, I'm doing everything I can to get ID'd, and if I put a mask on when I'm facing them within 1.5 meters, then I can scream obscenities and challenge them and record it. So the best weapon we have right now, actually there's two, one is humiliation, and the second is ridicule, and we do both. So we call them names because he can, for now, before they use some legal force, and second, we are ridiculing them. So that's the thing we're doing here. I know there's more activities. There's bars and discos and stuff, and in one of the cities, the Twin actually was last week. They again congregated, and they used not just police but also some sound grenades and tear gas, and there was the presence of the fighters with the health authority. So health authority can force the restaurant or club to be closed, but they just issue the warning or give you a letter. But the firefighters, they can actually lock it up, like you're not compliant with some codes. And that's another trend. And most recent one is actually that the fiscus, the tax authorities are going after the owners. So this is like a full-scale assault where you have every possible authority congregating on someone that just wants to earn the living to feed their family. Because if they don't, they only like inches away from going broke, which is again part of the, I can say that later, but that's the plan. The plan is of this pandemic to cause enough lockdowns or interruption of business that most people will bleed to death. They collapse. They walk away from the equities. Some that survived, they took loans, some bridge loans, so they can get over another 3-4 months after first lockdown or lockdown, and now they've been put against the wall and now been slaughtered. And if they don't survive that, and it's game over. So the more of those situations, the more of the likelihood of a scenario, which is the dream of Klaus Schwab of World Economic Forum, of eliminating business altogether, like a little commie state, eliminating ownership, this guaranteed minimum income, which is coming from where? From the state, but the state is not producing. So where's the money coming from? Well, from big corporations. And the big corporations, they are basically replacing means of production. There's no small business. In Canada, 80% in the United States 80% of employment comes from small business. In Poland, it's also going in that direction. So if you exclude the big corporations, mostly from the West, all the grocery chains, all the Home Depots, and those big. By the way, all of them been open all the time. They haven't lost a day. So if the small business is gone, where those people are going to find a way of making a living? So they're going to be working either for the government or they're going to be working for the corporation. And if you work for the government, then obviously you have to be more than just an obedient dog, because you're at the mercy. So it's like a tank. You can turn it off and on. So if you cross them, if you say something, whatever, they just kick your ass, and there you go. You will not see a penny. And if you work for the corporation, as I was witnessing today, the only place I can't do any shopping without being harassed or chased out of is Albi store, like Leroy, which is the hardware stores, big stores, and I refused to wear the mask, so I was refused service. But then finally I decided, okay, I pretend I wear a mask just to get through the cashiers. And when I did, I pay cash, because all I use cash. I don't use debit cards if I can, because cashless society is probably one of the last nails in this coffin of our freedom. And I handed this lady a brand new 200 zloty bill. It was almost like I just printed this morning. However, it had a little tear, not the ripped piece of the paper. It was just a little tear. And she looked at me, obviously over the mask, probably 3 layers. And she said, "Sir, but I might not be able to accept it." And then she examined it a little bit close. I said, "Well, you're lucky because the tear is still there. So I will make an exception." And I said, "Excuse me? What are you talking about? It's cash, it's money, it's Polish." She said, that's the store policy. I said, "What's the store policy? That the bank has to be in perfect shape, like I printed myself. The banknote is always good as long as you can read the serial number. Everything is just the decoration." So I said, "This is not the government rule. This is your headquarters rule, and that headquarter now and your corporation is governing almost, if not over the state or the government of the country, it's parallel. And now if you look at the rules and regulations that corporations are imposing, particularly in Canada and Australia, look at Qantas Airways, they're going to be actually even more of a Robocop, even more of a Nazi, to impose even more regulations to show the state they are trustworthy, because in return, that very state is rewarding them for allowing them to keep their business open." And what it means, when you strangle the competition, in about 80% of businesses that are small and competitive, and they're all over the place, if you kill them, if you starve them, if you execute them, then they'll be the only business to go to. And this is how the circle closes. This is how the corporations are in it with the government. They are corrupted by the central banks, with the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, with International Monetary Fund that is regulating everything. Now we have actually so many different layers of statehood, but has nothing to do with the nation states, where our countries, our nations, have been reduced to like this little jelly, that people no longer understand the culture, their tradition. They're always looking outbound. They're looking like important. Everybody wants to be part of EU. They don't care about the history, the language, because they want to be Europeans. They don't just care to be Poles. And then, doing shopping in a mall that just opened on the 1st of February as an exemption, but the gyms are still closed, and wedding halls are still closed, and all hotels are still closed. So why is it happening? Because obviously the next chapter of this book, if we don't stand up, then we're going to be only working and depending on those big entities. There are pretty much one entity, which is the New World Order manipulators, the neo-Nazis of our globalism.
Yes. So, just to be on a bit of an optimist note, are you indeed optimistic from what you see from that, opening action? Is that trend of opening restaurant, hotels, and other businesses, is it steadily growing? Would you say that, it's rolling kind of well into February?
Well, we have to always put everything in context, and the first question that comes to my mind: why Poland? Why Poland is setting a precedence? You might say a dangerous precedence, where you look all the surrounding countries, starting with Germany, that now is banning cloth masks, and you have to have surgical masks. You know what's happening in England. You know what's happening in your country. In Slovakia, you can't leave a house more than 1 kilometer away if you don't have 2 negative PCR tests within a week or second dose vaccination. And by the way, this is the country that accepted euro as a currency at the beginning, so they completely lost control of the economy a long time ago. And so I'm not sure why this is happening. I think I have an idea. It probably has to do with Poland's slightly different role in a European, Central European dynamic, and not just politically, but also economically. Poland is a very good place to produce things at very discounted value. We are a significant market for Germany, and they don't probably want to completely strangle it. Obviously, they might just get it on the auction for $1, like it's happening with our hotels. They've been forced to bankrupt, and there is a corporation that is connected to Polish government that is making an offer to one of the hotel owners to have them bought from them for 10% of the pre-pandemic or pandemic value. So there is obviously a trend to depress the valuations of major businesses in Poland in private hands. They were doing very well, and they have value. And now if they go broke and almost collapse, then they will be taken over by the banks. If they survive now with the hyperinflation in the future, this will be a reality anyway. So why is it happening? I don't think it's just the Polish spirit. If you look at the cross societal dimension, how many people believe in COVID and the obedience, the ratio of mask holes, then I'd say there's no any difference between Canada and Poland. The only difference is in Poland, masks are mandatory here. In Canada, only in certain provinces where they have a complete lockdown, like Quebec or Ontario. So I wouldn't attribute it to an amazing spirit, and definitely not the numbers, because we don't have the numbers. It seemed to be always the same characters that are doing this, same people, digital soldiers like I and others, and people on the street reporting. And the businesses that opened, they took a chance. There's a bit of an underground. There is places that are open, but they don't want to market it. So people just use the word of mouth, and they hope to have enough business at least to earn money for any potential fine. There is a movement associated with even parties. I know that, for example, Confederacja is the one that was most vocal, and Grzegorz Braun being the only parliamentarian never wearing a mask, and he's attending every rally, every protest that is meaningful. He's speaking against the pandemic, against the vaccines, forceful vaccines, and against everything else. I was with him in Berlin during the biggest rally of my life, the 2 or 3 million people there. We were there together as a group. And so I think it's a combination of maybe that unknown to what extent Polish economy and this 3 Cs, whatever you call it, agreement we have north-south. Maybe it's a buffer to Ukraine and Belarus. And you know what? I will really have to lie to you to say if I know the answer to that, why they gave us this little opening. I know one thing for sure, that this ruling party, Peace and Justice, has dropped in the polls dramatically. I'd say, I can easily make that call, that Peace most likely will lose the next election, unless they repeat the trick of Joe Biden. And it's a very simple formula. It doesn't matter who votes. What's important is who's counting the votes, and they will be the ones counting it. However, there is a bit of a threat from few politicians. They are not a solution to this country because they are left. And obviously, Confederacja, there's three parts to it, which, Grzegorz Braun being the most vocal and recognizable. Korwin-Mikke is a bit of a fixture. It's more of an anarchist or monarchist, I would say, in that case. He's not I am actually anarchist. And there is the center, which is Bosak, that was aspiring to become a president, but that they seem to have lost a bit of a drift here. And I don't think that each of them individually can create any potential threat, but all of them together still are a party in the parliament. So peace might lose election. This might be the pre-election trick to soften the blow, maybe heal some wounds, and maybe maintain a little bit of that majority they have. But it's a close call. And if you assume what I always assume, that none of those governments are sovereign, and every politician, and particularly on the very top, is not has not happened by accident. All of them have been chosen ahead of time, including Morawiecki, a banker that has been taped and recorded about 10 years ago. There was this big scandal. He was recorded in a hotel saying that the only way to solve problem of the banks, which is oversupply of money and hyperinflation that might be coming, and the destruction of the circulation, I mean the money flow, all the stuff, is to basically collapse the economy. And you might call it a call for a global reset, which is collapsing the ownership and taking people's money away. And then he said that people will be working for the bowl of rice. And that's him saying. And then by accident, right, quote unquote, he became a prime minister replacing Ms. Szydło. There was a patriot, and she didn't speak probably very good English or so, but he was obviously better positioned to be introduced to European Parliament and work with the globalist and a Bilderberg group and the Davos people, all the cabal, and under the pretext that he is actually trying to strengthen Poland and put a foot down that we are the civilized nation because we have a young premier that can talk English with Justin Trudeau and Macron and other idiots, and that's obviously all BS. So I think that all of them have been so significantly compromised, like Joe Biden has with China business, and that's actually the formula. I can tell everybody here, if you want to go high up in politics, make sure that you a lot of crap stuff, because once they get it on you, then they're probably gonna invite you to go and run, because they know that that they will never run your own politics, that you'll always be on a hook. And if they need to pull the trigger on you, there will be the tapes, will be, some pornography, could be sexual stuff, some child abuse, or, whatever. I mean, this can go on and on and on. So this is how Poland, go ahead.
So I just wanted to come back because you mentioned hyperinflation. So some are predicting that hyperinflation may happen pretty soon, even March. That's what I've heard. Some say a big economical disaster and attempt to confiscate our property tied up to mortgages in particular to recover banks will be happening within 2 years max. So what do you see potentially happening as a result of shutting down the entire world for a year and counting? Like, are you seeing those things happening pretty soon?
Well, I mean, they're ready to do anything. I have to assume that if they're willing to do it, they would. I don't know if this is the time for them to do it. Don't forget Agenda 2030 clearly specifies the deadline. So it all started years ago, the New World Order, obviously, and Al Gore lost to George Bush Jr. not by accident. So Al Gore was given the packet of global warming fantasy, and became the king of global warming lie. And George Bush initiated 9/11, and this was where the terrorism was introduced, and with it was the control of money flow, a so-called money laundering or terrorism founding scheme. And also, this was the time where all the organizations were created a little bit to mimic what was happening in the United Kingdom. There was or has been a police state for many, many years prior to that, cameras everywhere, including men's washrooms. And they can find you anywhere. So the George Bush started it, and then obviously we had lots of other things happening. 2008 fiasco, but the swine flu, the H1N1, when they tried to pull this one on us and it failed. This was where they're shooting for it, and there's Rockefeller papers that spoke about it, about this pandemic, and that didn't happen. So they had to wait till 2019, and 2019, as you know, has been a practice or exercise in Davos in 2019 October, where we had a full simulation through Event 201, which everything we've seen right now has been clearly explained. And to add insult to injury, I can tell you there's another production already out there you can read, which is John Hopkins, which is talking about the virus 2028, and that virus will be very, very deadly because it will originate from some animals, which means that it will probably kill all the farmers in the United States, and this is when they're going to go and grab their weapons, and this is going to be the end of the Second Amendment. Now, the loss of Biden obviously accelerated the whole thing because Trump was the last obstacle, and Biden, as Chinese call him, is the man in Washington. So now probably they won't even have to wait till 2027 will be probably the year where China will officially become the superpower economically and militarily. So how is this relevant that they're gonna shut it down everything today? Well, they haven't finished yet because there's still a bit of an awareness about this, and now we know all about the 5G and QR codes and contact tracing and the microchip and the big pharma and the vaccination. The Bill Gates talking before Pentagon about genetic control of adenosine. I think it's chromosome A that is responsible for so-called God's gene, which is he was suggesting it to control religious extremism. And I saw it on YouTube. That's his word. So they have this technology for a very long time. People are speculating, was this vaccine, is it genetic or what? Is it artificial intelligence? Is it chip? Something they can trigger? Is it to trigger our disease? Is it to trigger our control of our mind? This transhumanism business they are working on. Yeah, it's all of it combined. But for now, I don't think they can physically do it. I think there's still too much of a mass, critical mass of people that are not yet completely under control. And I would say 10%, maybe 20% of populace, like I assume you and I, we have a clarity, even though we don't know all the details. We have a clarity that this is not an accident. Trump didn't lose because Biden won by 10 million votes, more than Obama, and Trump because he got 80,000 people at his rally, and Biden only 7 or 8 people literally, and Biden won and Trump lost. We know that the pandemic, the COVID, was a tool to create a mail-in voting precedence, and Trump was warning about it. Every mail-in voting is a recipe for. So here you go. And now we are at the stage where there's a lot of vaccine experimentation. I don't want to say everything in this one paragraph, but I will come back to it. I will give you a few words about the comparison between Merck, that just abandoned vaccine program, and Pfizer and Moderna, the most recent revelations, and also WHO, that stand on PCR tests and the fraud called case-demic, where the WHO is calling for reduction of number of cycles, which in Canada is about 35 to 45, which means that about 90% of tests coming positive are false positives, because the inventor of those very tests, PCR tests, Kary Mullis, a Nobel Prize winner from United States, coincidentally or conveniently died in October of last year, even though all he did was spend his life inventing this, and that test was not invented to find a connection between the virus and the disease. It was only to find fragments of viruses, active or non-active. Test subsequently adopted by a German scientist, Dresden, based on formula sent or description by Chinese when they encountered this so-called Wuhan virus. And then he created a program to test it. He's never seen the virus. And then he sent it back to China. They adopted it. Then they sent it to WHO and CDC in the States, and that became a global standard. And in Canada, it's 35 to 45, so bingo, which means that there's absolutely no reliability. So WHO, that is actually changing the rules all the time, sometimes for better for us, has not been actually studied by the governments because it's in their best interest to hide it. But what WHO said, you cannot take a positive test result as a sole indicator of the presence of disease. The only way to do it is if you have on top of the positive results, which in case of 45, it's absolutely, it's idiocy. It should never be used, should be rejected. But even if you do, then you have to have at least one or two symptoms. So fever, sore throat, difficulty breathing, or maybe you have a loss of sense of smell. So you can't just say positive and you're going into jail in Canada for 17 days. But that's how it is. So those vaccines definitely is something they want to introduce because it will allow them to deal with other components of this reset, global reset. Like Klaus Schwab said, build back better, which is start from scratch, eliminate everything and create a better planet without probably half of the population, because we obviously the real target is depopulation, but not all at once. I think they still want us to be alive for a while. They can probably handle us easy, but this is our opening. This is, nobody's perfect. Don't forget that this cabal is about 5,000 bankers. They have encompassed about $500 trillion. This is the BIS. This is the central bank of central banks. They have all the wealth of the planet. Every central bank, as we all know, is privately owned. This doesn't belong to the nation. It's called national bank or central bank. It's private bank. So what they do, they give you a loan, and that loan is a number. It's a digital thing. They send it to your account so you can pay for your house. You get your mortgage, you get your loan. But they haven't given you anything. It's like a credit note. And then when you do your business and you grow and you grow and you develop, or you buy a house, you build a building, you have brick and mortar, you have equity. This is the real thing. They gave you, a monopoly money, and you did something with it. And then all of a sudden, you think you're going to make profit and survive and maybe retire on it. And then they pull the fast one on you. They lock you down. They ask you to borrow money so you can sustain yourself. You do. Then they're going to lock you down again. And you borrow again, and they're going to increase the interest rates. And then all of a sudden, your interest rate go from 1% to 10%. And then you go belly up. And what they do, they say, can we get the keys? So they get the keys from your car, from your home, from your business. And all of a sudden, the piece of shit they call money, which is no longer, because it has no backup in gold, it's just digital crap. And instead, they took your buildings. They took their real thing, their real asset, the real equity. And this is how bankers become rich, because they exchange fake money, like fake gold, into real asset that took sweat and blood to produce, took everything you have, every hour of your life that you live has been used to produce it, and they just wiped it out. So they're not ready yet to answer shortly after this long answer. And I think that it all depends on on the level of desperation, also the accidents they're going to encounter. And not everything has been tested. As you see, they couldn't have tested this before. Now we see the results, old people dying with the combination of the a genetically modified vaccine and a virus effect, which I can explain to you if you want. And that's going to be another wave where you have a combination of the vaccine that is causing a chronic inflammation or chronic state of fighting the disease, a bit of a mild anaphylactic reaction. When you expose people to the second dose of the vaccine, then you have almost anaphylactic reaction, but not yet. But when you put them into the situation when they're exposed to the old virus, Dr. Dolores Hale spoke about it. Also, the gentleman Del Bigtree, which I happen to listen to, but also Sasha Stone, which I had a Zoom meeting with a few times before. So what it is creating a real wave of deaths in mostly among the elderly and vulnerable, the frail people that have multiple conditions, mostly conditions that deal with lungs and breathing and heart conditions. They are the most vulnerable due to the ability of coronavirus to attack those ACE receptors that actually are responsible for bonding oxygen in blood. That's why you have multiple organ failures when you have blood clots, and that's what happens. And this is going to be happening in mass. So when you're going to see the warning that lots of people are dying in Canada now, or Ireland, or United States, or Australia, New Zealand, obviously, then you're going to know it's not because we have the new version of mutated virus, because hello, scientists, viruses mutate all the time. So if why they were not chasing the flu vaccine every 3 months? They just had one for the year, and it worked or not, worked only for 30% of the people, 40 to 50 got it or less, and it was the end of it. Now they try to have, and this is what Pfizer actually said, that we have a new virus. All right, and look, it originated in UK. Why? Because UK is on top of the game. It's the British Commonwealth, right? They run the show. They know exactly when and where and how it's supposed to happen. The penal colony, formerly known as Australia, is already ahead of everybody because it's like a micro China there with QR coding and everything, and as you know, the hotels quarantines and permanent lockdowns. They locked down city of Perth in the state of Victoria because they had one positive case after 2 weeks. So bingo, like we locking down, like someone sneezed in the flu season, like, hey, let's just shut everything down. And New Zealand is just beyond anything, because what they did in March of last year, whereas for 5 million people population, that's reality, 5 million people in New Zealand, the total number of deaths they incurred so far from COVID, which is not from COVID, is 29. This is all the number of people that died. And I always kind of joke that Maoris are killing more women every day, because I like them, every day than everybody that has died from COVID, even if you assume that 90% of that COVID count is fake. 29 people for 5 million. And right now, New Zealand, after 2 months of zero COVID cases, how is it even possible? Everybody probably can have it. 2 months, and they did on purpose. Nobody tested positive. And out of the blue, there is this person that came from Europe, of course, because Europe, UK, right? New virus. And they shut down New Zealand, lockdown stage 4, and they already called for complete shutdown of travel until end of 2021. So now New Zealand effectively, other than this little corridor with Australia, there was only after you were quarantined and tested negative before and after, you were allowed to fly to Australia, which is like a sister penal colony. Now they obviously suspended that as well. And I tell you what the plan for New Zealand is. I've been there too. It is to depopulate it, because New Zealand is this little, a little child project for billionaires. They want to keep New Zealand like Vancouver Island in British Columbia just to themselves. It's pristine. It got fjords and glaciers and beautiful mountains. And what they're doing, that they're actually building an underground gigantic complexes And it's not just for Bill Gates and Bezos, that, by the way, is retiring from CEO of Amazon. Surprisingly, why? And you can buy a place for a few $1 million, like 1,000 square foot condo, minus 20 levels, with the windows replaced with TV screens, and you have a complete self-sufficient water system, oxygen system, sewer system, food supplies for 5 years, and like the real billionaires, they have gigantic castles underground. So if it's like an N bomb or some other pandemic, they're gonna deploy. So one day they're gonna walk out. Every New Zealander will be dead except for them, because they can survive. And now imagine how a nice place it is, like such a big island for like 20 people. That's why they're not taking immigrants, they're not taking tourism, investors. You cannot buy a place in New Zealand. And that's why they're doing this chronic. And the prime minister, and the person I really can't stand, she's kind of Trudeau equivalent of New Zealand, Arden, whatever. She's such a fraud. And you can see the smirk on her face when she's announcing, the measures and the punishment if you do this or you don't do quarantine. She's a freaking psychopath, and she's a female, and I love women. I'm a feminist. I'm a lesbian. I love women, and I hate her. This is how bad it is.
Okay, so I just want to just one moment. Because I saw some questions in the audience, and they really want to some kind of solution to it. So would you say that what Poland or Italy, by the way, did, started opening up despite all the regulations, is this the way to go, or is there anything else that we can do? Like if you can talk just a little bit about what you see is actually working, and to give some inspiration to our audience, and possibly anybody else that will be watching later later on this video. So because people sitting here very comfortably on this COVID help still, but that's gonna end at some stage, and there will be not much left. So they need to take action, unless they really want to wake up in a kind of nightmare pretty soon.
Well, I think it takes a spirit to do it. I think that not every nation has what it takes. And ironically, Slavic nations, we've been the least appreciated or respected, because we were kind of villains. We were barbarians. We were not civilized enough. We're always looking out to the West. The Western Hemisphere, and in this particular case, the English-speaking part of the world, the former British colonies, I guess, they experience this slow cooking of a frog, and I think they're pretty much done. The resistance is hard to awake in those people, because they don't have the tradition, they don't have the what it takes. We need to know either we have to experience it, or we have to have parents or grandparents listen to the stories, because what it's going to take is quite a bit of sacrifice. So when it comes to Poland right now, you can see a lot of people, they're acting aggressively towards the police. And they take a stand, they challenge the system, they disobey. They don't wear masks wherever they can. They challenge the things in courts. There is a lot of stuff legal also happening, is taking place right now, which is the creation of arbitrary court, which I'm not quite familiar with it, but it's more like a natural law, where we can actually have a court of our own peers. They can pass the sentence. Let's say we want to punish the cop misbehaving, raw cop. And once we reach the verdict, we can pass it on to regular courts. And apparently those courts have to respect it, and they will certify it. So kind of natural law. We also do it in Canada. So in Poland, that's one trend. Another one is obviously motivating business owners to open. There is a fund. We are gathering funds to defend them, to give them legal defense, and there is this critical mass, and I think that the best way to fight, including or involving people that would naturally not support us, is to give people fun. So that's why the clubs seem to be this opener for this end of the curfew, because young people, some of them, I even saw them with masks at the beginning. They no longer, but once they go in and they for a second forget in what oppressive state they've been living without questioning, living obedient life. Now, when they start drinking and dancing and hanging and doing stuff they normally have done, all of a sudden you seem to be, unblocking this part of the brain that has been paralyzed. So the fun, it's like a laughter, like sense of humor, and people joking and sitting in a death row. And this is where we are at. We are sitting on the death row waiting our execution. So there's two ways of going about it. Either, and not to use the sad reference to Holocaust, and some people, I don't want to turn into political stuff, so please don't use this. I'm disputing any of that, but just to say, there was a record, and I read books about this, where the Jewish people were digging their own graves, and they're walking towards it. And sometimes the execution was canceled because it was rain. So the Germans decided to go retrieve to their barracks and come back and to finish it off. So they took this very people to their own huts. It was somewhere in Belarus or Ukraine, wherever. And the people just followed them, went to sleep, had another 6 hours, and then at the break of the dawn, they got up. They went back to those graves that they dug themselves the day before, and they were waiting to be shot. So this is exactly the scenario we're in. So if I can tell people, and, I don't have a formula like, hey, that, first of all, turn off the frickin' TV, okay? And we have the saying, people, turn off TV and turn off thinking, okay? That's the first thing. Don't believe anything you hear out there. That's one. You don't have to believe me either. But don't listen to TV, because we said in TV, the virus ends when you turn off that bloody box, because it's a propaganda machine that was created by Rockefeller when he created this Mockingbird program with the CIA, when he impregnated U.S. in mainstream media with CIA agents, and that's programming just began. So TV is off. What are you gonna do? Then obviously you have internet for now. I mean, that's a lot of sources, and you can sit there and listen to people like Joseph Conrad. And what I'm going to do for you, I'm going to tell you, just take off this bloody diaper from your face whenever you don't have to at the beginning. I'm not saying to get a ticket or get in prison for that, but look around and think, what is this cloth going to do for you? It's not designed to stop the virus, even if there is one. The airborne viruses cannot be stopped by most of the masks, because the nature of airborne viruses is they travel. And the definition of how they travel is that droplets, if it's air, has been changed. Our results was changed many times, because this is how they introduce different means of control. But at the end of the day, even WHO did not recommend the masks, as they did not recommend lockdowns, because they know they are killing the third and fourth world countries, and they still have to pretend they care about those poor countries, like the shortage of vaccines right now, the card they're playing. So when you understand the biology of the virus, the only way to stop the virus is to get herd immunity. So you have to mingle, you have to interact with people, because only 0.5% of people will die from COVID-19, even if you believe it. 95% of people in Canada have been genocided in seniors' homes. Those people don't freaking travel anywhere. They stay in the seniors' homes. What's killing them is other diseases, viral or bacterial, old age, pre-existing conditions, and most of all, what's killing them is they lost the sense and desire to live, because they've been deprived of love and care. And they're dying alone without their loved ones, and they're dying without the last rites and the priests, if they're believers. They pushing them over the edge by sucking out any will to live. Old people only live because they need a reason to live. Once you remove that reason to live, they're gonna die. If the spouse dies, the second one goes very quickly, because what's the point of living? So this is what they're doing. They generally. So what I'm saying, take this bloody cloth off your mask and be a free person, even temporarily, even if you walk alone on the street, if you know nobody can see you. Don't wear it indiscriminately all the time, because they're so obedient and polite that even the powers didn't expect them to be so dumb and polite. As a matter of fact, in New York and some other places, the moment they announced the lockdowns, there were thousands of military converging on big cities because they were expecting riots. Nothing happened, because they already probably known that we've been trained, we've been programmed through the mainstream media, through our cell phones. They became the best tool to impregnate your ideas. And most of all, this is pretty much the extension of artificial intelligence, because the Google is your God, because there's no longer any religion left, and churches in Canada have been closed since March. So first, civil disobedience. We call it in Canada, there's one guy in Toronto, Chris Sky is my little local hero there. Unite in non-compliance. Unite in non-compliance. Chris Sky was just banned from city of Toronto. Okay, 21st century. I know he challenged the system because he has the right to do it, and he is legally in the right all the time. However, he's got multiple civil suits against him. And most recently, he challenged the guy in the store not wearing a mask, and the cops took care of him, and obviously multiple offenses and participation in illegal assemblies or rallies. Finally, he's got a ban, but he works in Toronto. How does it work? Like this guy I told you, he's been banned from flying Air Canada and some other local airlines because they consider him to be a threat to society at large, even though he has a mask exemption. So airlines, as I said before, the big corporations, they are the supreme powers. So yes, stay alone in a park, take this off your face, and feel free for a second. If that becomes contagious, maybe try to do it somewhere else. Maybe when you see us pushing against the cops and calling them by the middle names and insulting them by any possible name in dictionary, then you see, hey, they got this courage. Where is this courage coming from? And what I'm saying is, you have to control the fear, because fear is the paralyzer. And this quote, the only thing to fear is fear itself. So if you're paralyzed by it, you're not gonna do anything. And there is this other aspect of finances, conformism and relationship, and if you hold a position, like if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you're a doctor, if you're whatever, bureaucrat, it's really hard to do it in your workplace nowadays without losing a job, like Dr. Martynowska in Wrocław here in Poland, sanctioned by the medical college. So, but you have to manifest to your friends in a small circle at the beginning, practice the civil disobedience, and join us in the club, enjoy your life, get your feeling back, stop being numb. And once you feel like you can do it, then maybe just follow the leader, because there always has to be a leader. Most people don't have it. Then you're going to watch other things, other places, the progress. And then finally think, what is the consequence of not doing anything? And I mean, you have to be realistic. Like, where does it end? This is like, this game has no end except for it's a dead end. And if they're willing to accept this, then we can help them. I already know the rule that you don't talk to people that are completely closed in their mindset with this confirmation bias. To get this opening, you have to shock them. Either you shock them with something, event, and maybe they experience something, but you cannot tell them the truth because they will never hear it. The truth, they're immune to it. Like we are immune to bullshit, to bias, to mainstream media crap. We just don't listen. That's exactly the opposite. So imagine what it would take you to be convinced that BBC is telling the truth, or CNN, right? Forget about it. So that's not the way. And I think it's a critical mass. I think that Poland is opening. It's a miracle. and let's hope the miracle will prevail. To what extent is it possible? I don't know the answer to it, but it's contagious. Italy, as we know, I think 300,000 restaurants or places. Italians are hot blood. They like to party. They like to gather. For them, it's part of living. Spain would have done the same, except for Spain never really bounced back from the Franco-Nazism. They're a fascist country, and I love Spain, but and I know they're pretty much done. I'm sorry, Polish people in Spain, if you listen to me. I still care about you. But yeah, it's what we have to, like in Canada, for example, right now, we have those quarantine prisons or facilities that I'm supposed to be destined for, of 3 weeks in jail if I'm positive, at the price tag of over $1,000, with some tests I don't trust and results I trust even less. I can be a victim. I could be suicided, or I could have a serious onset of disease. And we have a protest right now in Calgary in front of the hotel that is hosting those poor souls returning, and they're protesting to let them go. And that's how you do it. But how they do it in the province of restrictions, they're risking. And they're not even doing it for themselves because they're not in that facility. They're doing it for themselves for the future, because they know now that following Australian model, Canada is now de facto, I'm making an official, a penal colony. So we join Australia, New Zealand, and I would assume that Ireland, UK will follow suit. So if we don't react now, then we better be caught on the right side of the ocean, in my case, here in Poland, because if I were to bet my money, I'll bet my last penny on Poland and not much on Canada nowadays.
Great. I would just to answer the question that was asked by one of the listeners. He was asking how to create a momentum. So I would just say, depending on where he is, presumably in Poland, I would just say, well, momentum is being done now at the moment. So maybe join one of the organizations in Poland, like there's wRealu. There are some other ones that maybe we can, you could suggest, if so that people can maybe, meet up in groups or something, or help in some way, because obviously maybe not enough people know about anything happening, or like that. But I would say the momentum in Poland is happening. Not so much here. I don't know where Michał is from. He didn't say that, but hopefully from Poland, so he can maybe lend a hand.
Well, clearly, I mean, there's so much on social media. Social media is the only source. There's a lot of events. I'm attending one tomorrow, one on Friday. I'm meeting with a group, wRealu, which is an organization that is fighting for open businesses, and I'm meeting with the organizers. I'm kind of a party animal, partying in both senses. I like that party, or politically, and I love to party.
I like those videos.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. I apologize, but hey, it's a war, so no prisoners.
Watching them actually gives me hope.
There you go. Sister, I'm doing this for you. I will suffer for you, Diana, okay? But anyway, a few shots on, if I will drink, definitely keeping you both in mind tomorrow. But then it's a Friday and there's other things. So clearly there's events. There was some protest today. I stumbled upon one. The business people, they were trying to kind of say the manifesto how to for the government to open up. I know they're working on opening of the gyms. There is already some rumors, and we're still waiting for the hotels. So there is a wave now. If some people are missing it, that's on them. And if we don't get it right, it's because of them. So I'm every time I see a bit of a hear a bit of a music, or it's like something going, I open the door, like, are you guys open? Say, you want to come in, come in. So you have to look for it, and lots of them don't advertise. So if you're in your city, your city, those places where you party, when you eat or drink, and just go there. And you don't want to, they don't want to advertise, because, those dogs, the bastards from the health, or the Sanepid, as we call it here, and the police, they're ready to go and strangle them. But once we build the business volume, It's a very slow process, because you know what? If we don't take this initiative now, if we let them starve or get fined or scared, they will never do it again. Because after this wave, and I'm warning you, those vaccines that people are taking right now, this is your next wave of sicknesses and disease. You have to call the bluff. That's exactly what I said. When the Merck said, you know what the Merck said, the company, they said, we're not going to be producing vaccines because the only way to kill this virus is through herd immunity. Instead, they're working on a so-called medication. And they also said that the efficacy of the vaccine, if they were successful in making it, for people over 65 would be only 8%. So how ridiculous it is that that's the very group of people you want to protect, and you can only offer them 8% of protection against sudden death or maybe complications. Now, everybody else, or 92%, is excluded. So why would you subject people to this experiment? And they're not even calling experiment, because they make it look like it's legit. So it's obviously, and then Pfizer comes back, said, we're still working on our vaccine, and we want to make sure that we have one every 3 months because the virus is changing so frequently. So this is your new model. If you believe in vaccines, like most of the people I know, even on my family side, which I feel sorry for, they're still my family because you don't choose them, and I love them, but it's pathetic. They say they don't believe in conspiracy theories, right? They will never watch us. Never mind. So this is what Pfizer is saying. Because the virus is mutating, probably we're going to need to have a new vaccine every 100 days. You know what this is formula for? To have a freaking lockdowns every 90 days so they can go back to their labs and create another version of the vaccine. How insane is this to set a tone for the rest of your bloody life? And I said, one of the last arguments in terms of this globalism BS, we travel a lot. And a lot of people call us a global village, right? A global warming, global village, global reset. And all of a sudden, if you take global and you just live a village, that's where we're going to end up, in your village. You're going to stay in your bloody village. You're not going to go to next county or next state or next province or next city, because you're going to need a permit like in frickin' Soviet Union. This is exactly what's happening in Canada right now. You might not be able to travel between provinces. There's no borders, but people will not get in a car because they're going to do the roadblock. There's only a few roads there, and they're going to intercept you, and you're going to get a fine of $5,000 or $10,000 or maybe 10 months in jail. So they will never do it, and it's over. And your world obviously has shrank so quickly that you don't need an air ticket. You just stay home and maybe better get a bicycle. But hey, if you get your vaccine updated, if you go and get your mask or PCR, you might not even be able to go to your neighbor because it's 3 kilometers, but you can only travel 1 kilometer. So this is absolutely the end game. And this is not a conspiracy theory. People, wake up. When was the last time most of people did normal things, like normal things? Walk out the house without the diaper, or, like, hey, let's just go somewhere. Let's just go. Yeah, exactly. So this is 1 year of your life, and you girls are very young. So you have many more ahead of you. For me, time is the most precious commodity. I've got everything else. I've got sense of humor. I've got good looks. I've got good money. Obviously, this is all quote unquote. What I need is time to enjoy it. So I said that in Vancouver at one of the rallies, and this was viral. Someone taped this speech. My dear friend Lynn Tyler Thompson, the journalist / politicians, when I said, I'd rather die standing than live as a slave for the rest of my life on my knees. And that's the choice we have. I'd rather have good quality few years than be on a chain in a cage somewhere. So we're fighting for humanity. This is nothing to do with the humanity. The conspiracy theory was created after JFK assassination. Why JFK was killed? Because he was one of the few first ones, after it was already game over, to separate American currency from the Federal Reserve. So there will be no private bankers printing the money. And he obviously crossed the very people. And obviously they created the term of conspiracy theory, because after that, every time they want to do something crazy, they're just gonna leak something. So they're gonna leak two stories, the real one and the fake one. And then you're gonna have two stories, and they're gonna say conspiracy theory, and nobody will believe either, because they're both equally probable, but how would you know which one is true? So once you label the version, each of them, as a conspiracy, people won't be seeking the truth, like 9/11, the towers collapsing in the, I'm an architect, no buildings will collapse in the same pattern, no matter what you do. You can simulate it a billion times, they will always collapse differently. And then you have to building number 7, collapse a few hours later, there was no explosion. Why did it collapse? But yeah, those planes were definitely an accident, right? So anyway, listen, don't get me started, because I can talk like this forever.
So just going back on the subject of inflation and economics, I have a question. So the estimated cost of the COVID pandemic to the world is anywhere between $20 to $60 trillion in cost and lost revenue. So do you see any kind of recovery from that? And if so, how many years will it take, if even? I mean, it's just a huge amount.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. What is if we try to define what is the actual loss of 20 to 60 trillion? If you think about it, who has lost? Well, the production. So let's say if I have a factory and I couldn't produce and I lost. Well, those big players, they haven't lost because they received an injection. Don't forget about this $500 trillion in the hands of those private bankers from Basel. They haven't lost anything, because what they've done, actually, this is the typical process of takeover, which is, as I tried to describe before. And forget about Amazon, about Apple, about big companies. By the way, Ford is moving production of electric cars to China. So this tells you that those factories will become a history, and there will be no middle class, and there will be no production there. So everything is built and produced in China. That's the trend. So that process of bankruptcies or collapsing the economies, and it's going to be prolonged if they want to be successful. So for that very reason, that when they do collapse everything, the whole equity will be turned over to those banks. So we're not talking about intellectual property. We're talking about collapsing the businesses of some kind that have some assets, so buildings, equipment. So what we've lost is ability to produce. But how does it work? So when a plant or something is producing a good, then the good gets sold, and someone buys it, spends, they earn money, and then obviously there's a tax exchange, and producer pays the tax from the production of the sold good and stuff. But at the end of the day, the product has to be produced, and it costs to produce it. It wasn't produced for nothing. So there is an investment to do it. So for the factory, for the plant, the net gain wouldn't be that great, because you have profit margin 5, 6, 7%. So it's important, but it's not. But for the central banks, they've got much more to gain from the collapse than from maintaining status quo, because the central banks committed, and they've been committing this sin for decades now. And in 2008, the sub-mortgage fiasco was the best example. They just overproduced fake money, and there was no collateral for that. So that money had no value. And what the banks were doing, they were buying government bonds that apparently paid more than the market could through loans and mortgages. So they were taking this little payout, and they were buying government bonds. So what government was giving them as a collateral? The value of the country. And what is the value of the country? Is the assets, the road, the bridges, the highways, whatever, the factories, the oil production. So the bank gave them injection of money, and they also supplied for private banks. And then instead, or in collateral, they receive bonds, which are actually the wealth. So to complete the process, to make it simple, to complete the process, if they can pull the trigger and bring this and fast forward, they would have done it like yesterday, and basically just take over whatever is left, and they would have officially now taken possession of everything that is out there that has of any value. And that's a great reset, by the way. They also want to collapse the money and ownership and assets, which means that all the savings and everything evaporate, because what is money in a bank? That's our value. It's not their value. This is our assets. When they take it away, they haven't lost anything, but we've lost everything. So at that point, they own everything, and they own our soul, because now they say, you want to live, you know, you're going to send you to re-education camp. You have your cure a score here, or what do you call it? Human behavior, social score. So if you like what we do, let's say we started the program with 100. By the time we finish, we've got 20. And you need social score 50 in your QR code on your phone to enter the store. They won't let you in because you're gonna flash red. Your QR score, your QR code will flash red, which means you either came in contact with a virus, someone that was around you, or you didn't pay your taxes, or you maybe were speeding, or God forbid you talk politics, or maybe you criticize the regime. So, and then they're gonna turn you off. They're gonna turn you off. Once you get your red, you go home and die out of starvation to that institution that is controlling your digital stuff, your money, your ability to access medical system, your subway, your store, your work. You go and you're gonna find out if it's because you were in, it would be probably the best scenario, they were in contact with someone that was testing COVID-27 by then, or maybe because you didn't pay your parking ticket. But then when you find out it's actually more serious because you become a dissident, then it's time for your organs to be donated to a proper owner. And that's the end of it. That's the end of the road. So the 40 or 60 trillion dollars, clearly it sounds serious, but America has a debt that will never pay it off. I think it's 20 trillion. A lot of it onto China as well. And the way it's going, it's all for profit. So, like if you let establishment politicians like Mitch McConnell or everybody, every liberal, Joe Biden or Jimbo Biden, they work for China. They have millions of profit just selling the country to them. And who cares? I mean, could be a flood after them. It's like, the last one will turn off the light. It's like a parasite. It's like a benign tumor that's eating the body away, and they need to keep the body alive, but they really need it altogether. So the debt is irrelevant because the game, the scale, the target is really big. It's changing the population, the ratio. They really care about the clean planet because they want to pass it on to the children, grandchildren. So it's going to be, let's say, maybe billion people altogether, and half of them, the ones on top, and the other ones would be simply the robo slaves with transhuman genes and controlled by 5G towers. Now, I know that a lot of people listening to us said, what the hell is wrong with this dude? The only reason I'm saying is that we can stop it. I'm not gonna freaking sugarcoat it for you. Say, hey, don't worry about it. It's gonna be okay. This virus is real. Maybe it's not that virus. Maybe they maybe try something. No, it's real. The whole shit, excuse my French, is real, and you have to get it because you have to be desperate. It's like someone is taking you to get you executed. Would you say, like, excuse me, can I move a little bit to the left, or maybe I can have a last meal? I didn't enjoy it because the meat wasn't to my taste. Like, this is fight for everything. And if people don't get it, you're going to face me first. Because I know that people are my worst enemy. It's not those globalists. Because I understand why because money is just too good. And those people have God's complex. If I had, $1 billion or 10 or maybe 50, I might be talking to you. I would definitely not be talking to you. I would. But the thing is, don't trust them. Those are lizard people. They're not humans in that sense. Like, nothing will happen automatically. This is not an experiment anymore. This is really done to our lives. That 89-90% of my energy every day is to fight those demons. Like, happening to me? Like, well, everybody should ask the question. First of all, is it really happening to me? And then why is it happening? And what am I supposed to do with it? So yes, get freaking scared. Like your life depends on it. Because if we lose it now, then all we can do is probably run. But there is nowhere to hide. There's nowhere, because we are locked in by the financial system, by the medical system. Now with all the technology and contact tracing and you know, spying on us, our phone is like a freaking Wikipedia for them. They can turn it on and off. Even if we turn it off, they still know everything about us. That's why they want to do this bloody digital money. I'd be rather bartering than using credit cards. So it's real. Look, I'm the partisan. All right. I'm not in the underground because too many people know my face now, but I rather go in with dignity than be slaughtered. People are getting slaughtered, and it's pathetic. It's disgusting. It makes me want to throw up. I can't look it. I can't accept it. I think that people are better than that. And I don't know what you have to do to me to scare me like this. With invisible virus, first was the terrorism, so invisible killer, right? What happened to terrorism in Europe? Eh? When was the last time something blew up? Where was the decapitations? Where is all the, you know, the shootings, all the, you know, anything? You know, was like, I remember France was like a yellow, green, red, you know, state of emergency. What the hell happened? Everybody died of COVID now? Or that it's like COVID, you know, the COVID cured influenza. Now COVID also cured terrorism. You know, influenza is gone. This year, or the last season, influenza cases dropped by 95%. Used to be 27 cases for 100,000. Now it's only 1 case for 100,000. So let me think, where did all those cases go? COVID? No, that's conspiracy theory. Just stop it. You know, like, that's impossible. How can one disease cure another disease? Maybe the Nobel Prize is on the way. Why don't we use COVID to cure cancer? Maybe we should find vaccine for cancer. That would be a great idea. I don't think this is what they want. I'm mad.
Yeah, Diana, do you have an other question? I think you have another one, don't you?
Do I have which? Sorry, couldn't hear you.
Question. I think you have another one, don't you?
Well, yeah, I do have a question. If we do come out, or when we do come out of this pandemic, in what psychological state will the people be? Because as we know, especially the young generation, the children, starting from the kindergartens with the masks and everything, how is this going to affect us psychologically? And especially that in Poland, there is no real, project or help for this type of sector. I mean, there's absolutely nothing in place to help people deal with it. So how is this really going to affect us? And especially if this is going to go on for God knows how long now. Well,
first of all, it can. I have to be very opinionated here. We can let it happen. Now we have to get this sense of urgency, because yes, I agree with you. If we don't, then we are dealing with the collapse of society. We are speaking of a complete abuse of children. And I've been fighting this in Vancouver. Every time I saw a masked up child with a mother, I was approaching them. I'm a bit of a vigilante. And I said, if you don't remove that garbage from your child's face, I'm going to report you to social services. Because you don't understand any of this. You don't get it. You don't have any clue what the virus is, especially this one. Why are you subjecting your child to this terror? You know, I have very good, vivid memories from my childhood, and it wasn't a childhood of opulence. I wasn't rich. but I was happy because all I had is childhood. So when you're a boy, you climb the trees, you ride a bike, you fall a few times, you do crazy stuff, and that's what makes you a man. That's why most of us die before the age of 20, and if we survive, we keep living. And then
Keep
you
going.
get 55, and you turn 55, and you buy yourself the biggest motorcycle there is out there. So children have been abused, and they've been abused by the system, and they've been abused by their parents. And parents have a gigantic role to play. In Canada, we have this organization, Hugs Over Masks,
Yeah.
and Mothers Against Distancing. And this was the beginning of our movement, in a way, other than our spontaneous protest against the COVID hoax, and then masks in general. And now they call us anti-maskers, flat earthers, anti-Semite, Holocaust deniers, and you can list it on and on. And so and I actually witnessed that also in my family when I was at the first communion last September. And the reason and condition for Polish churches to be open, they had to follow all the strict rules. The difference in Canada is our churches are closed. They just killed the church. And now the religion is a something different story, but obviously it's probably even more appropriate because it's spiritual, and I don't support churches if they don't share my spiritual values and they follow the governments, because God and church should be above any state in that sense. But anyway, so at that first communion, every child had to wear a mask. And there were like, what, 10? And obviously not in a group risk, not to be contaminated, not to be contagious, not to be sick or die of it. And now everybody had pictures taken with the freaking masks. And this is something, a memory, and you look at those pictures 20 years later, and this is exactly what this is for. It's not just to create the trauma, but to create a physical memory of the event. Like we are witnessing pictures from Auschwitz, or bombardment of Berlin, or Warsaw Uprising, or some other events, or earthquake, or tsunami. This is so people affected will never forget, and next generations that will come after will always know. And those pictures are for that reason. That's why people are wearing those masks, because they think there is no any way around it. But the system is obviously doing this, so they get programmed, will be obedient. Every time there is a need, they will push that button or turn on the switch, and people will so happily search for those masks because they already know the drill. Like obedient dogs, they know virus, panic, pandemic, lockdown, loss of everything, mask, sanitizer, another test could be different. Then you get your vaccine, and then you wait, and then you wait. And then your master says, okay, dogs, we're going for a walk. It's not going to be a long one. And they say, you know what? Not today, maybe tomorrow. And they're going to be paying them until it's completely over. So trauma is clearly on top of that list. Creating permanent memories and history. So this will be in the books. Did you see any politician, any leader that is stepping in front of the camera without a mask? They never do, because it's virtue signaling. They want everybody to see that masks are for real. And even Prime Minister, even the freaking Queen of England is wearing one. But do you see them like 10 minutes off camera? When they're drinking scotch or whatever, they're laughing like, oh, we got them again. So we have to stop this. Psychologically, we will never climb out of it. There is more people in Vancouver dying of the drug overdose on East Hastings Street in Vancouver. In 1 month, I repeat it, in 1 month in Vancouver, more people dying from drug overdose than has died in all Canada from COVID-19 outside of seniors' homes. So that gives you an idea that drug overdose is a chronic pathological problem in Canada, in Vancouver. There is more suicides every day in Canada that has died from even falsified COVID in a month. People are dying of everything but this. People are dying from cancer. People are denied medical treatment, diagnosis. People will be dying en masse from all those conditions, but they will be all labeled as heroes because they would have been classified as victims of the virus. You can't even get the body now. You get it in a body bag, and they offer either they cremate it or you can get it, but you can't open it. Like a contagion, Ebola. Like I don't know what it is. I mean, this is, I lost my dear friend from high school here in Wrocław. He was one of the best orthopedic surgeons, definitely in this region. And we go back to high school, our first trips to Germany. And I only found out after he passed away on December 18th. He was my age, 58. He was a smoker for a few years before, for sure. But he died because first he was on the respirator, apparently for a few weeks. And then he was in pharmaceutical coma for 2 weeks or so. And then he died. They were looking for lung transplant for him because he was obviously very young and very valuable, but they couldn't. So yes, people are dying. Like, why did he die? Why wasn't he given amantadina or hydroxychloroquine or why the system failed him? Because clearly, if I had it my way, I would say, Arthur, there's a way. This is what you do. Take it now. Don't wait for the system to take care of, because the system is designed to kill you. So they're killing their own ones to prove their point. So we can't afford any more of that. Children are already deprived of 1 year of their childhood. They don't know what the playground is. They don't know what interaction. And that's exactly what it is, because they keep people apart. Stay safe, stay home. In Canada, the Minister of Health is suggesting we should masturbate rather than have sex because it's safer. They say use masks when you're having sex, or glory holes, which most people probably don't know what it is, but I'm not going to be describing it because it's disgusting.
I wonder if anyone took his advice on that.
I don't know, but without giving this woman any unnecessary fame or exposure, her name is Teresa Tam, and she is very close associate of Fauci, connected to WHO and CDC, whatever else. And so is Bonnie Henry from British Columbia, that not coincidentally is being now sued by us in the courts for abusive lockdowns. And that's the beginning. We're starting. That's why they call us all the names in dictionary, trying to label us as dangerous, flood eaters and anti-maskers. We have a justice center that is dealing with this quarantine prison, which I am prepared to challenge. I'm dealing with Canadian Embassy. I'm dealing with Ottawa. I sent a letter to Marc Garneau, the Minister of Transportation, to challenge him on the legality of it. The fact that the returning Canadians need to pay to come home in the vicinity of $3,000 per person. Like, I have a constitutional right, and also guaranteed by the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, to be able to live in my country, to leave the country, and to return to my country. And I can be sick like a dog. I could be on my last leg. I could be HIV positive. I could be also with tuberculosis, which is a very contagious disease. I could be anything, Hep C. I'll be allowed to come home. But if you travel with this, contagion that nobody is dying from other than those unfortunate people that are dying for many, many reasons, including this, then you have to be punished. And the message is, we Canadians are better than that. And those travelers, we have to let them know, you have to be a patriot, stay home, stay safe. Those that travel will be fined with what? 3 weeks of prison, unnecessary test before I leave Poland, 20 or 48 hours after I take another test in Canada, then false positive, 2 weeks on top of 3 days in a prison for which I pay, then set for another 14 days. So altogether 17 days, and I had negative tests in Poland. Otherwise, I won't be able to get on a plane. And it's from my own pocket. And now, this is the story. If you leave and you're stupid enough to do it, but you're on social assistance, they cut it off. So this is where you have your dependence on the governments, that they are the only job providers if there is no small business. So more and more people were going on welfare. And once you're that welfare, now they receive the CRB benefits, which is $2,000 per month if you can't find a job because of that. Now they suspend it for the duration of quarantine. So there's this kind of like carrot and stick situation. For me, I'm not getting any of that. I'm only paying. So now if you cross the border to Canada illegally on foot, which a lot of people do from the States, they're coming all the way from Mexico, they go to Canada, then they're going to intercept you at the border. They're going to provide you with hotel, free testing, free food, free clothing. They're going to set you in a housing and going to support you for the rest of your life. When you're returning a tax-paying Canadian, they're going to send you a message. How dare you? All right. And there was cases like this. There was this pastor's wife that just went for 3 days to Texas, and she took a test before she left Canada because she wouldn't be able to fly to the States. She went to Houston. She did this recording of her CD before flying back to Canada, which is just 3 days apart from the last time she did a test in Canada. She took another negative test. She boarded the flight. She arrived in Alberta, and she was intercepted by the immigration, by the nurse. And they said, you have to take another test. We're going to put you in a facility for 3 days. She panicked. They said, that's the way, that's the law if it's not. She said, can I call my husband? She called her husband. He panicked, said, like, what are you doing? Where are you taking her? They said, we can't tell you. So he asked the name of the officer performing the duties. And the officer said, I'm sorry, I cannot tell you. So she was arrested pretty much, put in a facility. And because we did this exposure on Lynn Tyler Thompson live show and stuff, we talk about it. After 3 days, maybe she probably tested negative. She was about to go home. So this is Canada. I know another story, which is probably too long to tell, but you know, there was another guy that was flying from Brazil via Mexico, United States. He's actually a Polish guy, and he said "F***." He didn't do any of that, but that was just before they introduced some of those extra measures. And he was bounced around and tossed around, and finally he made it from the States to Canada. Then they agreed to let him in without the test, but they were trying to force him on arrival and a quarantine, and he said no and no. And he just walked away. And the police couldn't force him to take it. The police said, sorry, this is not our jurisdiction. And he got 2 tickets, about $2,000 value. But the point is, the real ticket they can give you is up to $750,000, and you can be in jail for 3 years. So this is how they can force you to do anything. So we don't have much leverage here. And that's, again, I really went a big loop here. How is going to traumatize people? It will kill us. We'll kill everything. We'll kill religion. We'll kill tradition. Look, people don't have Christmas, Easter. They have no Thanksgiving. They don't have gatherings. They don't hang out. They don't socialize. They don't even know what it is to talk to another human being. Like, people are jumping when I'm coming too close, even though sometimes I can wear the mask. But if you come too close in contact, they just bounce off like you were like walking open grenade. People just lost any desire of human interaction. This is the beginning of the artificial intelligence programming, where we're gonna be completely dehumanized. We are dehumanized right now because people are fighting each other over nothing. They look at each other like a threat. It's no longer the virus, it's you. You're this big spreader. And that's why I'm standing up to them, and not always, you know, jumping in the face, but that's what you have to do, because it's them or us, and them is more than us. So when they decide to go and stone us, they might. Next stage will be Nazi or Stasi, you know, style of denouncing, collaborating, and you will be with the QR code and social score. Clearly, this will be something will be put an end to us, because everybody that you come in contact with will be spying on you. And that's exactly what they want. The government of Canada is encouraging people to tell on others. If you heard someone having a gathering, you know, during holidays, lockdowns, you know, if someone showed up, if you notice a car God forbid, a car with their license, with the plates from another province, then people are destroying cars from other province. Like if you in BC and you see the car with the Alberta plates, people are just vandalizing your car, and they call it for the guy to be fined. There's one fellow in Canada. His name is Mark Elias. He's a Vancouver Liberal writing executive. His title is past president, election readiness and campaign. Bullshit long name. But this is what he said about breaking quarantine. In paraphrasing, he said, those who break quarantine should be shot on sight. But exactly the quote is, make sure people have essentials for a month, for they have no reason to leave the house. So you should be prepared for 1 month to stay in the house. Shoot people on site who defy curfew. That will kill the spread of the virus, and then we can go back to normal. All right. So I don't know if you remember, but the global warming spreaders, the first religion before COVID, in the European Parliament, there was one fellow that was calling for death penalty for global warming deniers. Now you have COVID deniers, or people that break the quarantine. Before you notice, people will be knocking at your door with an axe and going after you because they think you're going to threaten their very existence. So trauma, for most people, yet not fully process or digest. For children, they've been traumatized, they just can't express it. Another year of this, and it will take decades of reversal. But don't forget, the reversal can only happen when there is a proper condition, which someone will have to say, we were wrong. We really screwed up. I'm sorry, mea culpa. Voluntarily, we all gonna resign like the government in Iceland. And please, we beg you, don't prosecute us. And that's what we were actually expecting early on, that if we put enough pressure on those bastards, we say, listen, this is your ticket out. We're not gonna prosecute, just get that out of my face, just go, disappear. Obviously, this is not gonna happen because, see, the problem with these pandemics is that the deeper they get into this pile of crap, the harder it is for them to get out, because now it's borderline criminal. There is, like what happened to the class actions by Rainer Fulmich in Germany? What happened to the World Global Alliance, which I'm so close with, and I follow them, and Dr. Cahill and the Barrington Declaration. I've been part of this from the very beginning. What happened? We have a so-called class action or beginning with Rocco Galati, which is a constitutional lawyer that filed frickin' in September of last year the injunction against masks. Now the whole frickin' country is wearing masks. Where's the progress? And he made quite a bit of money because it's all collections from the Vaccine Choice Canada organization that were fighting the forceful vaccination, or Action for Canada, another organization that helped us to build this protest movement. So nothing happened. So where is Rainer Fulmich? Where is Dr. Scheningen? Where's everybody? That I understand it's not easy, but isn't it the 5 minutes after midnight, so to speak? Like, isn't it too late already? What are we waiting for? What happened to frickin' Germany? There was this glimmer of hope that everybody saw that, hey, cannot be banned from protesting. It's in the freaking constitution. Now they full, size concentration camps, and it's not going to get worse.
You would expect to see some sort of results, after a year.
Merkel already said that she will continue with the lockdown. My dear friend from Berlin told me that they want to keep the lockdowns for as long as it takes to reduce number of hospital beds in ER below 50%. Now, if you go with this vaccination roundup, and if people start really developing complications from that, as they will, you're going to have a mass genocide, and they're always going to label it as another virus before they say this vaccine doesn't work anymore. Listen, I can write so many different scenarios about this, and I'm scared to death because every time I come up with something bloody stupid and horrific, it's happening. So I'm not going to give them good ideas, but I bet they probably have them anyway. So I'm going to say it. When they're going to call this vaccine obsolete, when they say it's no longer effective on this new virus, not so coincidentally created in England, because they have to always go to the top of the food chain. When they send the message, they send it to South Africa, they send it to Australia, and now it's in Brazil. Why? Because in Copacabana Beach in Rio de Janeiro, everybody is freaking enjoying their life without the carnival, yet they still try to have fun. So they have to take care of Brazil. So if they do this, if they really start causing these mad deaths and gonna label it new virus, another virus, COVID-21 version B and C and D, we're gonna go straight to another lockdown. And instead of seeing the end of the light in the tunnel like last year with the spring, onset of spring and summer, they couldn't deny us this because they knew that nobody's going to believe it. Now, when they have this new concept of mutating viruses and no longer seasonal, then you're in it forever. What's going to stop them? What's going to stop them from doing this if everybody that is so scared shitless right now is going to hear it's actually worse? It's actually, there is no panacea. Vaccine is no longer the end of it, and never was, because vaccine was not the end game. Vaccine was just a tool to maybe send you a bit of a mRNA messaging, maybe program you a little bit, maybe set you up for serious illness, whatever freaking they're planning on you. But for them, it's like, we have this thing in Poland. It's not about catching the rabbit, it's about chasing him. And there's so much more fun creating more tests, more procedures, more restrictions, more lockdowns. And at some point, imagine, I would probably give up too at some point, because what are the chances? Like, there's fewer and fewer of us. And if they really want to round us in the paddy wagons, all those people, like, we know who they are. We know the names and faces. It will take them like a week, maybe less. Everybody will end up in concentration camp. We have them built in Canada. They've been building them on government contracts a long time ago, when we were called conspiracy theories, that we are making it up. It's all true now. It will be gone, and the resistance is over. So are they psychopathic enough to play with the remainder of the people? They're already obedient and wear everything and stand on their head in the morning for half an hour because they heard it on TV, and maybe bend backwards a little bit and maybe say something like a spell. I don't know. I mean, those people are so paralyzed and so stupefied that I almost feel no regret and no sympathy or empathy for them. I mean, they're totally guilty of the misery. We have to help them somehow, because if we leave them alone, we can't do it alone. We need to wake them up. So the message is, girls, we have to get serious. What it means, you have to think every day you wake up, open your eyes, how much more miserable your day yesterday was than the day before, and what is it exactly that you're looking up to today? Are you looking up to something? Is it a trip, a travel, a birthday party, or wedding, or whatever?
An interview.
Yeah.
I would seriously, easily, and happily give up this newfound fame that just for a piece of normality. But I know that I can be more effective doing this. I think that not many people have ability to process and synthesize, and it takes not just age and experience, but also time and patience. And I'm completely capitalizing on it, and I'm sharing it with people because I know they can't cope with this. They just basically black and white, and you cannot overcomplicate. So I'm a little bit dramatic sometimes. I'm using some tough words or even exploitives. But I think the time for nice is over, and the only way to wake them up is through shock therapy. Now, we can't do this. We can, apply the usual British invented treatment to get people straight so they can talk sense, because unfortunately it's not in our disposal. But I would happily do this, just tie them up and just give them good current for 15 minutes. Hopefully they would see it. Otherwise, we just have to be A, patient, B, we have to set an example, C, we have to really walk the talk. We have to really preach the gospel and actually show them an example. And we have to give them idea and spirit and hope, because they're always looking for formula. Well, listen, I haven't invented this this hoax is not of my doing. I can only react to something that have been in works for decades, since forever, since a 17th century, since French Revolution and Russian Revolution, and then First War and Second War. Everything was planned. This is another war. This war has been planned. So was, Iron Curtain and communism and Lenin and all the bullshit. Everything has been staged. The only thing was spontaneous is probably just physiology. People getting up in the morning and doing whatever and going to bed. Everything in between, there is money behind it. And that's the time, subject for another program.
Yeah.
How is this possible that they've been able to accomplish it? And who are the main players? And after that, you will find me suicided in the forest. And you will know, like, I don't know what happened to him. He was such a nice guy.
Oh, don't write black scenarios for yourself.
Yeah.
I have to stop giving them stupid ideas. I know. But at least this program be the record. But I mean, it's a sad story. I don't want to finish probably on it. But there was one lady in the United States. You probably know who that person was, and she was suicided, and she was anti-vaccines, and she was an activist, dear friend of my friends in Vancouver. And she actually specifically made a recording saying, if something happened to me, I didn't kill myself. And she had a perfect bill of health. And she also got just new life policy because she was a single mother. And she said, if something happens to me, it's not an accident. So make sure that you follow up and create a foundation in my name and try to find out what happened to me. And the moment this online account for donation was created, the next day was taken out. And now we will never hear about her again. So this is how it goes when you become dangerous, when you speak the truth. And there is a litany of names like this, people that lost their lives, including this Roger. Keep forgetting his name. The guy from BIS that was the whistleblower from Holland, and he died of natural causes somewhere in the forest. No, but not before he actually made a lot of YouTube films about the cabal, the bloodletting, the human sacrifice, the satanic cult that runs this show. And he was one of them, and he spoke about it, and then he just died. Like Carey Mullis died, and some others. Like the guy in Canada was working for Rebel News. Someone that also died. And so our life is fragile, and there's a lot of other things that can kill us. And I can probably easily bet there's probably a million other reasons we might not be alive tomorrow, but COVID-19 is probably the least one to worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is an optimistic end.
Okay, that was a bit of a shock therapy, I must say. And I suppose we need it, and our viewers need it, and the ones who will be watching it later on probably also need it, if not to know new facts, because I think a lot of people who watch us is aware, at least to kind of take it in again and maybe get a kick out of it, to do something new, to maybe come up with some new strategy, and to make maybe every day of your life really, worth looking forward to. Just don't waste it, because it's gonna be tough before it's gonna be better, hopefully, and we need to probably really make the most of every day, with our families, with our kids, with friends, with everybody that we can meet and talk to, because talking to people does bring effects. I've seen it myself. My husband's particularly good at it, that he kind of has patience and a bit of a diplomacy, but he's very, steady and persistent, and it does bring effects sometimes. So I think we need to talk to people, and yes, also show them, like walk the talk. Yeah.
Well, there was one question from Rafa, I noticed on the screen, and his question was,
is there any hope?
Is there any hope?
Hope.
Well,
Yeah.
I know that we've touched on that question a few times or
Mhm.
more. Well, look, we are smiling, right? So you say, as long as there is a smile, there's a spirit, there's hope, and there is some plan. There is always hope, but you can't see my as the last few shows I did. I'm on a mission to say it how it is, or a little bit more, because as I said, the time for nice is over. Now we can basically comfort each other. We can hug and say, hey, there's always another day, and the sky will be blue, and it's all bullshit. It's not. Now hope is what you're gonna do. What you're gonna do with this message. Are you gonna think I'm full of, what? Or you think that maybe the guy is into something? Like, why am I so smart and you are not? I think we both can figure it out because I chose to be that way. So I'm not taking shit for granted. I'm using a lot of French expression today. So listen, don't trust anybody. The typical business approach, trust. So if you trust CNN, be my guest. I will throw up if I turn on the channel, but go ahead. But then verify. How are you going to do it? Go to different sources, but try to open up. Try to get rid of this confirmation bias, this cognitive dissonance, this building this invisible wall between the truth and your perception of it. Your perception is always wrong. And I know because I'm so often wrong. And that's the only way to get better with this. When you question your own ideas, you question your own perception of reality. And the best example is look in the mirror. And I know for sure that you always see yourself different than others. You're a different person. But just by confronting your ideas and speaking openly, without bias or prejudice, you can actually create an environment when people will inspire you to go deeper. And it's hard to process all those layers. Then at some point, I guess, if you trust me, you can say that I today spent 2.5 hours of my life to help you get it. Because I'm not monetizing this. This is just to share my knowledge because I know that's the best thing I can do. Some people are born with certain gift, and I think it's a gift to get the message. But I can't comment on a lot of things. I have no idea. I can't comment about medicine or even history or some other things because I'm leaving this for the experts. However, when those very experts like doctors and scientists are sticking a finger in my what and telling me this is how it's going to be because they know better, I'm not telling doctors or researchers how to drive the car or how to spend the holidays. But when I have a choice of taking a medication or not, let it be my choice. If someone is telling me that my life is going to end because I don't listen, I said, try me. Let it be my choice. I also even said this some time ago. Let me sign the frickin' waiver that I will not be a burden to a medical system. That if I in fact get tested with this bullshit disease, I will cover it from my own pocket. It'll be easy for me, but that's not good enough because it's not I'm gonna give them the way out of it because I'm supposed to be in a labyrinth. This is not supposed to be way out because it's us walking back and forth and losing the way and losing it and losing our mind and then maybe jumping off the bridge, say, I can't take this anymore. Like this movie Network, the guy is screaming at the screen, say, pretty much addressing the media, which is like deja vu, saying like, turn off your TVs, they're lying to you. This is the quintessential movie about this infiltration of media by the CIA. Very good movie, very real one. People don't get it, that our reality is a Hollywood thing. And it was like the Hollywood was replicating reality and getting it to the next level. Now we are actually more science fiction than any movie out there, except for we're not getting paid. We are bloody extras, not even actors in this freaking movie. It's a very bad production. The good movie, you don't know the ending. And I do. It's not a happy ending if you don't move your ass. So there's no bloody hope. I'm not your mama. I'm not your uncle. I'm not Santa Claus. There's not going to be candies. You grab it. This is your last hope. You sleep by the wheel. I mean, especially if you're young, what the hell you have to lose? Like Trump used to say, what do you have to lose? Well, now they know, Americans, what they lost. Everything.
They do. And maybe
Don't
that's a
we
way
miss
to
him?
as well. I would do.
So, sorry, you have to.
Don't we miss him, Diana?
No, I don't. I don't miss him because he's omnipresent in my mind, and I'm not like many others that believe that we are looking kind of at General Flynn and resurrection of Trump and some event of rogue generals supportive. Well, I hope it. Like we always, if you're really ill, you hope for miracle. I'm a realist, but I'm also sometimes, very rarely, I'm an optimist. So I choose to be an optimist in that category because I just can't stand this demon rat cabal. It just makes me want to puke. You don't get it, no, but I was, because my wife encouraged me, I went to Trump's inauguration. So I've witnessed the last presidency of a true grassroots president. And he will become a folk hero. And by pure accident, I was there. And I was also hoping he would win. It was a bit of a betting game I did during primaries and stuff. And it was the most amazing experience, even though he did some harm to us, the Polish people that built 447 and the deal he did. But again, overall, there will be no bloody way anybody can come close, using his paraphrase. And I hope that different topic, of course, for some of your viewers that say, hey, what's the hope? What are we going to do? Well, if you wake up tomorrow, there's a coup d'etat and Biden, I can't use those terms because we're going to ban your show, but let's say just disappeared because he's an old guy with Alzheimer's. And Kamala Harris decided to reclaim her Indian status in India, or maybe go to wherever Jamaica she's from, and we might have some hope. But again, it's not about hope. It's about putting things in context and just doing a bit of accounting. I'm a number man, so you look at your left column, what you got before this shitstorm started. Just look at the plus side. So you travel, you went out, you had a lot of sexual partners, you were going to clubs, you were traveling, you're riding your bike, whatever, scooter. Okay, and then what do you have today? Just do the same thing. And I got nothing. All right, so how old are you? I'm 27. All right, so do you believe in miracles? And they say, no. So how would you believe in miracle that this will change for better? What do they have to gain from flipping it backwards and giving your freedom back? Like they were stupid enough, like just to sleep behind the wheel. Like they didn't know, like, oh my God, we've been too far. I mean, we're still humans, right? We have to give them something back. No, it's all plan, it's all strategy, and we are just slaughter sheep. This is like exactly the example I gave you from those trenches that were built to be buried with executed people. That I'm not going to use them by name, not to give you the keyword here. But the point is, the only hope is in your desperation. So find that resource, go to those deepest layers, and be angry. Don't be happy. I don't want you to be comfortable. I don't want to give you hope, because hope is like I gave you a gun without a bullet. You have to go there with everything you got, with your fists, with your brains, with your anger, with your frustration, with your ridicule. You just have to be a loaded gun with everything you got. If you're good in talking like I am, as you notice, this is your deadly weapon. But if you're good with, spending money, go and support those businesses. And if you drink like I do, then you better get a liver transplant. And then if you just angry, just be angry. Just be yourself. Don't block it. Don't be nice. Don't, forget this bloody political correctness. This is what got us completely destroyed. Political correctness, like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the political correctness, the transgenderism, the rainbow freaking pedestrian crossing. Like, you wake up in the morning and, am I a man? Am I a woman? I'm not sure which washroom I'm going to be using today at the university. Like, there's the guy, 5'7", white Caucasian guy walking into the most expensive school in the United States, let it be Harvard. So 5'7", white, and say, if I told you that I'm 6'7", black guy, would you believe me? So, and don't forget, people pay like $150,000 tuition. And you look at that person that all they heard is this liberal garbage from the liberal college professors, how them actually as Chinese spy. And the person looks and like, well, if you think so, then you must be, right? Look, and this is this relativity we are facing with, that people are, they don't need artificial intelligence. All the intelligence is locked in their cell phone, and all they care about is the most recent Instagram. Like, and the selfies with the lips thing. I'm seeing so many of them, and I love it. But you know what? This is not going to save us. And I'm not saying women are going to go onto the trenches and fight, because I actually found women to be most effective, and both on the trenches, in protests, and in your media as well. So there is a kudos to you. And I think maybe because women think they are, vulnerable, and those oppressors, those tyrants, those genocidal maniacs will not go after you because you're female, right? Well, they go after guys. Well, I wish they did. But anyway,
they already are going from what I hear. So I don't think
anyway,
there's any problem.
I think you have to wrap up, because just send a message to people that are listening to us. And I know that my feeling is that we really covered a lot of area, and this is my third show within 3 days. So it's really hard to be creative, not to repeat yourself, not because everybody that watched me everywhere, but just for my own sake. I don't want to repeat the same gospel, but the message has to be the same. So I found this, I think it's not very modest, but I'm going to say this was a very good podcast. And I think I again open up a lot of areas. And for all those people that care, and they know you, and I guess know me now, if they look at this in trilogy, I started on Sunday in a hairdresser shop. We did live on Facebook with One Media, and we have 100,000 now. And we did with wRealu 24 on a Monday, and it was 5 p.m. show. Now we have close to 200,000. And I completely use different technique, but similar message, more about Canada though. And now we're doing this, and yours, I think, is the winner. So make sure that you get it, because I can't, like, if you ask me tomorrow to say something, none of it will be the same, because it's like a flow of thoughts, and it's like a painter. Every painting is different. The message is should be important, but the wording and how you get to people, it's something you cannot count on, and sometimes you can come flat, and I can only apologize. I hope I didn't disappoint today.
Definitely not.
No, definitely not. I think it was a very good message. You painted very vividly what may happen if we don't, stand up, get up off our bums, and do the necessary. And I think anger is important. Being frustrated is important, because look behind me, Provence. I want to go there again with my family. I don't want to sit here forever. And just
Come
for
with
the
me.
record,
Come with me. Let's go next week.
oh my God.
Let's get arrested after, and let's just tape everything.
Well,
That's how you get things done.
I know I have kids, so unfortunately, if I was
No,
single,
I'm teasing. I'm teasing.
That's
I don't.
Let Diana do it. Diana, let's go. Let's do another tattoo in province.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, so
province.
this everybody has some places that they want to go again for holidays, which apparently we are supposed to be not thinking of this year. So people,
That's what we were told in Ireland. Forget about
yes,
going anywhere, planning
yes,
anything for the
exactly.
2021.
So
Someone
Ridiculous.
canceled Christmas, right? Which country canceled Christmas?
God Almighty, I don't know, but they were trying to in a way. I don't think anybody was in Europe particularly successful about it. They just shrinking for many people to some really ridiculous size, minuscule size. But anyway, the message is that we need to get our act together in Ireland, and definitely in Poland we need to get going as we do. Because for some of us will be just a one-way ticket out, and you know so if some people are willing to just collect their toys and go somewhere else from Ireland, it should give someone an idea that maybe this ship is sinking, and maybe let's do something before it's gonna go down completely. So
This is like gravity. You can't escape it. This is not something we can stop by being rational. This is not something we can work around or fool. The system is tight. The system has all the money, has all the power, has all the determination, and the rewards are just too great for them. Those are maniacs. Those people, we can never relate to it because we don't know what it feels to have everything. Like, we know we're gonna die, but listen, I bet they probably can even clone themselves. They live on different planets. I'm not even touching extraterrestrial and other areas that people probably have some ideas. But what I'm saying is, and I don't even want to know, like people say, like, to understand how it feels to be a child molester. For example, you're a psychologist or an actor, or whatever, you have to get into their mind. I don't want to get into their mind. For me, it's a no-go zone. But I know that they are definitely not normal humans. And what they're trying to do, they want to end humanity. And everything that we are craving so much that makes us human, they want to deprive us of it. So every simple thing, simple interactions, your tradition, your Christmas, your the most basic instinct interaction gone. Now, it wasn't a lengthy process. If this had happened, if they were patient, and that's something I'm gonna maybe leave you with, because I always analyze things. I'm an architect, so for me this has to be about some order. So with all the resources and with all the will and preparation, why would they pull the trigger on it in such an obvious fashion that we all got it? Well, not all, but we got it, right? Like, I would not have speculated about it 2 years ago. I knew about 9/11 and other things. I knew about banks, and I was expecting things, but this is different. This is getting into my genes. This is getting into my mind. This is where I say, oh, this is my territory, okay? It's my last castle. Like, you don't sit on my bike when I ride it. So the thing is, why they did it so we can notice it? Is it a perversion, like a cat that just caught a mouse, kind of playing with it? Hey, you can try, but I still catch you because it's wounded. I don't know, but the thing is, we didn't catch them. They led us to catch them. So it is maybe for the show. Maybe they're just playing this game. Maybe they're watching us on big screen somewhere underground and just having this ecstasy of tyranny with evil, lizard-like crappy. I don't even know that. I don't want to know. Mm-hmm. So now, because they pulled the trigger, what does it mean? Is it something that we really can't stop anymore? Because they're so powerful and determined, they can do it in a daylight, like a highway robbery. I don't know, because how can we know? I mean, to understand that, you have to be a psychopath. So the only thing we have, and I repeat myself over and over and over again, Those people that trust the system, they trust the government, trust the medical system, the vaccines, the medications, the media, they're gone. They're beyond hope. We can't save ourselves trying to convert them because it's too far gone. It's like metastatic cancer stage 5 or 4. It's over. You just make your plans. So how we can deal with this? Well, all we have left is apply the simple formula. If we need to panic, this is the time to panic. I always say to my medical student son when he's studying for exams, you rather panic 3 weeks before the exam than the day before exam, because that gives you enough adrenaline to still be coherent and to prepare. But when it's the last minute, it's over. So I call this in our meetings as the last bell. And I might be wrong. Maybe we have 2 more rounds to go, maybe 3, maybe, hey, maybe never. But are you prepared to take the chance? Are you willing to put yourself to the test when you're in this last cell without the door, without the window, and when they close the door, it's over and it's just darkness? So I rather run from them now and run towards the light and slaloming between those obstacles, like one crap over the other, and test versus vaccine and lockdown. And I rather deal with it now because I feel I still have some power. And we have to use this power now when we can be still productive. And we are a minority, and we will remain a minority, and we will die a minority. But how we die, that's our choice. And I choose to die free.
And that optimistic accent will close our evening for today. It's a little bit somber, but the times are like that. So I guess we need to get that message across. I hope that everybody, got something out of it and some inspiration this way or another. And of course, we will see our viewers again next week with another guest. And we thank you very much, Leszek, for that much time that you gave to us this evening, because it was a long one. And I hope, and I thank everyone who stayed with us till the end, for the patience too. So with this one, I bid everybody good night. And if you can just stay for 1 or 2 minutes.
Thank you very much.
After the broadcast. Thank you very much and
Good night.
Stay optimistic and go deep. Good night.
Good night.